Have you ever wondered what it feels like to watch someone throw away the very last piece of a memory you're terrified of losing? To stand there, frozen, as a person who married into your family decides, without hesitation, without permission, without the slightest understanding, that something sacred to you is nothing but old fabric. Because that's exactly what happened the moment I saw my daughter in law drop my granddaughter's baby blanket straight into the trash bin outside, as casually as someone flicking away an empty wrapper. And if you're a parent or a grandparent, you understand the ache behind those words. You know that a baby blanket isn't just cloth, it's the sound of first giggles, it's the smell of newborn skin. It's the only thing that stops you from forgetting how tiny they once were, how fragile, how miraculous. But maybe you also know the deeper fear, the fear that as you grow older, the memories you protect so fiercely become clutter to someone else. That your treasures become trash in younger hands, that your heart becomes someone's inconvenience. When I saw her standing there with that trash bag, her expression so firm, so dismissive, so impatient with anything that came before her version of now, something inside my chest sank. She held that soft pink blanket, my granddaughter's first blanket, the one I crocheted myself when my hands were steadier and my eyes didn't blur from tears so easily, with two fingers like it disgusted her. She doesn't need this anymore, she muttered, not seeing me watching from the door. This old thing is just taking up space, taking up space. How easily some people use those words, as if memories don't deserve room. As if love doesn't deserve room. As if aging means you no longer get a say in what stays and what goes. For a moment, I couldn't speak. My throat tightened, my vision blurred, my heart felt heavy in a way that only age can teach you, because you learn painfully that the world shifts faster than you can keep up. Belongings get labeled outdated, voices get talked over, sentimental things become unnecessary, and one day someone decides your feelings are too delicate, too inconvenient, too tied to the past. But then something else happened, something so strange, so quietly alarming that it made my breath catch. When she dropped the blanket into the trash bag, it didn't fall lightly like soft cloth should. It hit the bottom with weight, real weight. A thud not loud but unmistakable. Blankets don't thud, not unless something is hidden inside them. My eyebrows lifted just slightly. Something was wrong, and for the first time that morning, I blinked away the blur of hurt and noticed. That blanket was heavier than it should have been, much heavier, and she had rolled it tight, much tighter than necessary, almost as if she didn't want anything peeking out. My heart began to beat faster, not just from pain now, but from something far more unsettling. Why would she roll it like that? Why throw it out herself when she usually made my son take the trash? Why wait until she thought no one was watching? Why insist that my granddaughter didn't need it anymore, when she knew I kept that blanket in a safe place? My granddaughter loved that blanket. She slept with it, hugged it, searched for it every night. It wasn't hers to throw. It wasn't mine to throw. It wasn't hers to decide. Yet there she was, tossing it away like a problem she finally solved. I stepped outside quietly, my hands trembling ever so slightly as the morning air brushed against my skin. She didn't hear me. She was too busy adjusting the bag, pressing it down, making sure the blanket was buried. That word hit me harder than I expected. Why bury a blanket? Why hide it under the other trash? Why handle it like something dangerous or damning? And then a deeper fear trickled through me, the kind that older women feel when they sense something wrong in a house they love. What if this wasn't about the blanket at all? What if something inside it wasn't meant to be found? Seniors often talk about intuition, the sixth sense that sharpens with age, and in that moment, mine screamed. But I couldn't let her know I had seen. Not yet. I waited until she walked back into the house, shoulders high, steps confident, as if she had finally erased something she'd wanted gone for a long time. I stood there alone beside the bin, staring at the bag, staring at the spot where I'd last seen my granddaughter snuggle that blanket under her chin. And then I reached in. My hand brushed the soft yarn, now cool from the morning air, and immediately I felt it again wait. Something wrapped, something tucked inside, something deliberately hidden. and that was when my heart stopped for a beat because I realized something chilling. My daughter-in-law hadn't just thrown away a memory, she was trying to get rid of whatever was hidden inside that blanket. My breath trembled, my fingers tightened. 1,000 questions flooded my mind all at once. What was she hiding? Why inside my granddaughter's blanket? How long had it been there? And why did she choose today, of all days, to throw it out? But one fear rose above them all, gripping me so tightly that I felt the world tilt. What if whatever was inside that blanket was never meant for my eyes, or worse, what if it was meant to stay hidden forever? I clutched the blanket to my chest, its heaviness now terrifying, and stepped inside the house without a word. I didn't know what I was about to discover. I didn't know if this was a mistake or a warning or the beginning of something far darker than I ever imagined. All I knew was this: I had to open that blanket. And whatever I found inside would change everything. People think family tension erupts overnight, like a storm that rolls in suddenly, but the truth is far quieter and far more painful. It begins in the small changes, the tiny dismissals, the subtle shifts that only someone who has lived long enough can recognize. And when I look back now, I can see exactly when my daughter-in-law, Melissa, began tightening her grip on the house, the routines, the decisions, and eventually on my granddaughter's life. It didn't start with cruelty. No, people like her don't start that way. They begin with sweetness, politeness, pretend concern. She came into our family smiling, always offering help, always talking about new traditions and modern ways. But slowly, almost invisibly, she began replacing things, removing things, changing things. First, she took over the kitchen, rearranged my cabinets, cleared out old dishes I'd had for decades, pushing them aside with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Then she moved to the living room, hid family photos in drawers because they didn't match the decor, replaced my warm lamps with bright white lights because it's more modern, even suggested repainting the nursery I had lovingly kept for my granddaughter. Each change was small enough to ignore, but each one left a sting, a faint bruise on my heart, and with every little shift, she spoke to me differently. "You're too sentimental," she'd say gently. "Kids don't need all this emotional clutter, as if memories were mess, as if love took up too much space." But the real trouble began when she started controlling what my granddaughter kept. Toys disappeared. Clothes I had knitted went missing. Books I read to her during our quiet afternoons somehow ended up in donation boxes. Little by little, things that connected me to her were vanishing. And every time I asked about it, Melissa had the same answer. "She's growing up, Mom," she'd say, her tone dipped in honey. "We have to let go of old things, old habits, old traditions, old people." I could feel the unspoken words beneath her smile. The older generation doesn't matter. Their ways don't matter. Their memories don't matter. You don't matter. And my son, my sweet, gentle son, he never knew how to push back. He'd grown so tired from work, from life, that he let Melissa steer everything. And people like her know exactly how to take advantage of that kind of exhaustion. She made all the decisions, all the rules. She decided what stayed and what went. She decided what my granddaughter wore, watched, ate, played with. And eventually, she began deciding what I was allowed to give her. One day she told me, "Please don't bring her any more old items. She doesn't need hand-me-downs." Hand-me-downs. That's what she called the things I made with my hands. The things her own baby once clung to. The things filled with memories, warmth, and stories she never cared to hear. The blanket, the soft pink one I crocheted, was the last item she couldn't touch because my granddaughter adored it. She carried it everywhere, slept with it, held it when she was scared or tired or upset. It wasn't just fabric, it was comfort. It was safety, it was connection, and that, more than anything, irritated Melissa. I saw the way her jaw tightened every time my granddaughter snuggled into it. I saw how she rolled her eyes when I washed it gently by hand. I saw how she tried, softly at first, to replace it with a cuter, more modern blanket, one with a cartoon animal and bright colors. But my granddaughter refused. She wanted her blanket, her real blanket. The one her grandmother made, and Melissa hated that because people like her need control. They need to be the center of everything. They need to feel like they are the ones shaping every memory, every routine, every moment. And a simple crocheted blanket made before she came into the picture was a threat to that control. The last remaining thread tying my granddaughter to something she couldn't manipulate, so she began undermining it. It's old, it's worn out, it smells weird, it's not good for her skin, it's unhygienic, it needs to go. Each comment was a rehearsal for the day she planned to take it away. And that day came without warning, without discussion, without care, just a quiet morning when she thought I wouldn't notice. But what unsettled me most wasn't her hatred of the blanket. It was the way she guarded it the past few days. She had taken it from the bed to wash, but washed it nowhere. She folded it quickly, sharply, differently than I ever had, and she kept it near her, not my granddaughter. I even saw her holding it in the hallway, whispering something under her breath, her face pale and tense. That blanket, something simple, something innocent, suddenly felt dangerous around her. And then I noticed the weight, the heaviness. The lump she kept pressing down inside it, smoothing it out quickly when she saw me coming. She hid it, she clutched it, she avoided eye contact, and then just when she thought I wasn't home, she threw it away, not donated. Not given to charity, thrown, buried under other trash so I wouldn't see. But fate has a strange way of revealing truth at the exact moment it's needed. I walked outside, I saw it. And when I lifted that blanket, felt the weight again, something inside my chest went cold. That wasn't just a memory she was throwing away. Something was hidden inside, something she didn't want me or anyone to see. And deep down, a shiver ran through me because I realized something terrifying. She wasn't getting rid of the blanket. She was getting rid of whatever was inside it. And whatever it was important. It was personal. And it was going to tear this family wide open. My daughter-in-law hadn't just thrown away a memory, she was trying to get rid of whatever was hidden inside that blanket. My breath trembled, my fingers tightened. 1,000 questions flooded my mind all at once. What was she hiding? Why inside my granddaughter's blanket? How long had it been there? And why did she choose today, of all days, to throw it out? But one fear rose above them all, gripping me so tightly that I felt the world tilt. What if whatever was inside that blanket was never meant for my eyes, or worse, what if it was meant to stay hidden forever? I clutched the blanket to my chest, its heaviness now terrifying, and stepped inside the house without a word. I didn't know what I was about to discover. I didn't know if this was a mistake or a warning or the beginning of something far darker than I ever imagined. All I knew was this: I had to open that blanket, and whatever I found inside would change everything. There are certain moments in life that feel like the ground shifts beneath your feet, moments so jarring that even the air feels wrong, heavy, suspicious. And when I watched my daughter-in-law throw that pink crocheted blanket into the trash with her own hands, it felt like the universe itself paused in disbelief. I stood frozen by the doorway, staring at her silhouette as she shoved the blanket deeper into the garbage bag, her movements quick, nervous, too forceful for something she insisted was just old fabric. The morning sun hit her face, and for a split second, I saw something I had never seen in her eyes before: not annoyance, not control, but fear. Real fear, fear of what was inside that blanket, fear that someone might find it, and that alone made my heart jump painfully against my ribs. She didn't notice me at first, and that gave me the rare chance to observe her without her usual mask of pretty smiles and helpful suggestions. She kept glancing left and right, swallowing hard, wiping sweat from her forehead, even though the weather was cool. When she bent down to push the bag further into the bin, I saw her fingers tremble. Not tremble from effort, tremble from guilt, tremble from urgency. And that's when the weight inside the blanket made sense. Something hidden, something secret, something she didn't want anyone to ever see again. My first instinct was heartbreak, the kind that sinks into your bones and makes your body feel twice as heavy, because that blanket wasn't just yarn and stitches. It was the last piece of innocence, the last piece of security my granddaughter clung to every night. It held her scent, her giggles, her tiny fist prints from when she learned to grab. It held memories Melissa could never understand because she never cared to. And seeing it treated like discardable trash made every insecurity of growing old roar to life inside me. The fear of becoming irrelevant, the fear of being pushed aside, the fear of having your lifetime of love erased by someone who thinks you cling to things too emotionally. But something pushed those hurts aside, something stronger, sharper instinct. A grandmother's instinct, the same one that wakes you in the middle of the night when your grandchild coughs in another room, the same one that tells you when someone's smile hides dark intentions. The same one that told me to stay absolutely quiet. I didn't call her name. I didn't ask what she was doing. I didn't confront her, not yet, because the way she handled that blanket, the way she shoved it deeper, the way she practically slammed the trash lid down, it all screamed one thing. This wasn't about cleanliness or modern parenting or letting go of old things. This was about hiding something she didn't want discovered. Finally, she straightened her back, exhaled shakily, brushed off her hands, and muttered to herself, "Good, that's taken care of. Taken care of." As if she had completed a task, as if she had gotten rid of a threat, as if she had eliminated evidence. My breath hitched. I stepped back, slipping into the hallway shadows before she could turn around and see me. I watched her through the narrow crack of the door as she walked back inside too quickly, like she wanted to put space between herself and the crime she'd just committed. Her footsteps echoed down the hall, hurried, uneven, then silence. And that silence didn't feel like peace. It felt like a warning. I walked outside slowly, my pulse thundering in my ears, and approached the trash bin with hands that trembled, not from age, but from a rising mixture of dread and determination. I lifted the lid, a faint smell of citrus cleaner wafted out. Melissa had sprayed something inside. Why clean the bin right before throwing the blanket away? My heart thudded once, twice, 3 times. I reached in and pulled the blanket out, brushing dirt from its edges. And there it was again, a hard lump inside. Not cloth, not stuffing, something solid, something deliberately wrapped and tucked carefully between the layers of yarn. My breath grew thin. I pressed on the lump with my fingers. It wasn't random. It wasn't natural. It was something hidden, something unmistakably placed there, something not meant to be found. My throat tightened, my eyes stung. A cold shiver ran down my arms. The questions came fast, sharp, relentless. What was she hiding inside my granddaughter's blanket? Why didn't she put it in the trash like normal? Why bury it deep? Why roll the blanket so tight it nearly tore the stitching? Why did she look over her shoulder 3 times before throwing it away? Why today? Why when she thought I was gone? Why inside something sentimental, not something disposable? And then the most terrifying thought of all hit me. What if whatever was inside wasn't meant to be placed there in the first place? What if someone else had hidden it long ago? What if my granddaughter had found it? What if Melissa panicked because she realized the blanket wasn't just a symbol of innocence, it was now a threat to her? I clutched the blanket tighter to my chest, inhaling the faint scent of lavender detergent I always used, mixed with something out of place, something metallic, something unfamiliar, something dangerous. I stepped inside the house quietly, the blanket heavy in my arms, and for the first time in years I felt afraid of what I might find. Not afraid for myself, but for my granddaughter, and for the truth. Because deep down I knew the truth wasn't going to be gentle. It wasn't going to be pretty, and whatever was buried inside this blanket was about to tear the illusion of our family wide open. I shut my bedroom door, locked it, placed the blanket on the bed, and took a trembling breath. This wasn't just a discarded memory. This wasn't just disrespect. This was intentional, secretive, dangerous. And with my hands shaking like they hadn't in years, I began to unwrap the blankets layer by layer, fold by fold, as something heavy, cold, and terrifying began to emerge from within. And the second I saw its shape, its shimmer, its unmistakable meaning, I felt my entire world tilt. She wasn't getting rid of the blanket. She was getting rid of whatever was inside it. And whatever it was important. It was personal. And it was going to tear this family wide open. My daughter-in-law hadn't just thrown away a memory, she was trying to get rid of whatever was hidden inside that blanket. My breath trembled, my fingers tightened. 1,000 questions flooded my mind all at once. What was she hiding? Why inside my granddaughter's blanket? How long had it been there? And why did she choose today of all days to throw it out? But one fear rose above them all, gripping me so tightly that I felt the world tilt. What if whatever was inside that blanket was never meant for my eyes, or worse, what if it was meant to stay hidden forever? I clutched the blanket to my chest, its heaviness now terrifying, and stepped inside the house without a word. I didn't know what I was about to discover. I didn't know if this was a mistake or a warning or the beginning of something far darker than I ever imagined. All I knew was this: I had to open that blanket, and whatever I found inside would change everything. I don't know how long I stood there staring at the blanket on my bed, but it felt like the world had shrunk around me, like the walls themselves were holding their breath, waiting for me to uncover whatever truth had been smuggled into those soft pink stitches. My hands trembled not from weakness, but from the bone-deep instinct that what I was about to discover was going to change everything I thought I knew about my home, my family, and the woman my son had married. I took a slow breath and began unfolding the blanket, one careful layer at a time. Each unroll felt heavier than the last, as if the secret inside wasn't just physical, but emotional, poisonous, quietly rotting beneath the surface of our lives without anyone noticing. The lump inside the yarn shifted slightly, solid and cold, and a chill crawled up my spine. Blankets are supposed to wrap warmth around a child, not cold metal, not weight, not secrets. The first fold came undone, and the lump rolled slightly toward me. I froze. For a moment, I couldn't bring myself to touch it. What if it was dangerous? What if it was something illegal? What if it was something that could hurt my granddaughter? Terrified thoughts surged through my mind like dark waves. What if she found it first? What if Melissa hid it to protect herself, not the child? What if she wanted the blanket gone so no one would ever find this? My heart hammered against my ribs as I peeled back the second layer. And then it happened. A small metallic glimmer escaped from between the yarn. A corner of something reflective, something sharp, something completely out of place inside a baby blanket. My breath hitched so hard it hurt. I pulled back the last fold, slowly, fearfully, praying I was wrong, and there it was, a jewelry box. Not the soft velvet kind used for weddings and joyful moments. No, this one was hard metal, scratched at the edges, dented, old, almost intentionally battered. It wasn't mine. It wasn't my granddaughter's. It wasn't anything I had ever seen in this house. My fingers hovered above it as dread prickled every nerve in my body. Why would Melissa hide a metal box inside a child's blanket? Why throw it away like it was dangerous? Why risk someone finding it? What was inside that terrified her enough to bury it in trash? I picked it up. It was heavier than it looked, cold even in my warm hands. I turned it over and noticed something that sent a shiver shooting down my spine. Scratched onto the underside, barely visible, were initials. Not my son's, not my granddaughter's, not mine, Melissa's. My stomach twisted. She owned this. This was hers. She was terrified of someone finding it. And she hid it in the one thing no one would dare throw away, my granddaughter's blanket, until today. I held my breath and opened the clasp. The lid creaked slowly, painfully, like it hadn't been opened in a very long time. And inside lay something that made my throat tighten so sharply I nearly choked on the air. A necklace, but not just any necklace. It was the necklace my granddaughter's father, my son, had given his late first wife, his first love. My granddaughter's mother, the necklace she never took off, the necklace that had gone missing the night she died, the necklace that was never found, the necklace the police asked us about for months. The necklace that was presumed stolen, lost, swallowed by tragedy, but somehow was now sitting in my hands inside a dirty metal box, hidden in my granddaughter's blanket, tossed into the trash by the woman who replaced her. My vision blurred, my breath shook. Memories slammed into me of police visits, unanswered questions, the haunting ache of a sudden death that never made sense. And now this. Why would Melissa have this? Why was it hidden? Why did she try to throw it away? A cold, horrifying thought slipped into my mind, slow and merciless. Did she find it somewhere, or did she always have it? My entire body went numb. Because if she always had it, then she had something to do with its disappearance. And if she wanted it destroyed, she knew something, maybe something terrible, maybe something dark. Maybe something that connected her to a moment everyone thought was an accident. A tear slipped down my cheek, not just from confusion, not just from anger, but from the crushing weight of betrayal and fear. I thought of my granddaughter. Her innocence, her happiness, her trust. And then I thought of Melissa, controlling, dismissive, cold, always irritated when I spoke about her father's first wife, always uncomfortable when the topic of the past came up, always shutting down conversations that involved memories she wasn't part of. Was that jealousy, or was it guilt? I stared at the necklace, the delicate chain tangled slightly from years of being hidden, and I knew, absolutely knew, that Melissa hadn't thrown away the blanket because it was old. She threw it away because it held a secret that could shatter everything she had built. I wrapped the necklace in a towel, slid the metal box under my sweater, and wiped the tears from my cheeks. My hands were shaking, but my mind had never been clearer. She hid this, she feared this, she threw this away, and now I needed to confront her, but I didn't expect what happened next. Because when I stepped out of my bedroom, ready to demand answers, Melissa was already standing in the hallway, pale, breathless, eyes wide with terror, and she wasn't looking at me. She was looking at the blanket in my hands. I felt my entire world tilt. She wasn't getting rid of the blanket. She was getting rid of whatever was inside it, and whatever it was important, it was personal. And it was going to tear this family wide open. My daughter-in-law hadn't just thrown away a memory, she was trying to get rid of whatever was hidden inside that blanket. My breath trembled, my fingers tightened. 1,000 questions flooded my mind all at once. What was she hiding? Why inside my granddaughter's blanket? How long had it been there? And why did she choose today of all days to throw it out? But one fear rose above them all, gripping me so tightly that I felt the world tilt. What if whatever was inside that blanket was never meant for my eyes, or worse, what if it was meant to stay hidden forever? I clutched the blanket to my chest, its heaviness now terrifying, and stepped inside the house without a word. I didn't know what I was about to discover. I didn't know if this was a mistake or a warning or the beginning of something far darker than I ever imagined. All I knew was this: I had to open that blanket, and whatever I found inside would change everything. The moment I stepped into the hallway holding that blanket, still warm from my hands and heavy with the secret she had tried so desperately to bury, I saw Melissa standing there like a ghost caught between fleeing and fighting, her complexion drained of color and her breath coming in short, shallow bursts, as if she already knew her carefully crafted world was about to collapse. Her eyes weren't on me, they were fixed on the blanket, on the faint bulge where the metal box had been, and in that instant I knew she realized I had found it. The fear in her expression wasn't ordinary fear. It was the fear of someone whose entire lie was unraveling faster than she could gather the threads. You weren't supposed to see that," she whispered, voice trembling, hand gripping the wall as though the house itself was spinning. I didn't speak yet. I let the silence sit heavily between us, a silence that forced her to squirm under the weight of her own guilt. And something remarkable happens when you grow older. You learn the power of stillness, the strength that comes from not raising your voice but raising your truth. I simply looked at her, long enough for her gaze to flicker, long enough for her mouth to dry, long enough for her to realize that I was no longer confused or sentimental or fragile. I knew, and she knew I knew. "Where did you get it?" I asked finally, my voice low, steady, so calm that it pulled a shudder from her. "The necklace, the one you hid inside my granddaughter's blanket." Her chin quivered. She looked everywhere except my eyes, at the ceiling, at the floor, at the baseboards, at her trembling hands. It's not what you think, she stammered, a phrase guilt uses when it doesn't know which direction to lie in. In that moment, my son appeared at the top of the stairs, drawn by the tension thick enough to taste in the air. His eyes flicked between us, confusion furrowing his brow, concern creeping into his voice as he asked, "What's going on?" Melissa's eyes widened further. Panic, pure panic. She opened her mouth fast, ready to lie, to twist, to spin a story that painted her innocent and me delusional. But I beat her to it, not with shouting, but with truth. I held up the necklace, delicate, shimmering, unmistakable, and watched the color drain from both their faces. My son stumbled down the stairs, gripping the rail as if the air had been punched out of him. That's your first wife's," I finished for him gently. "The necklace she never took off, the one that vanished the night she died." His hand flew to his mouth as if he might be sick. Melissa froze in place, eyes darting between him and me, her breath trembling like a thin thread ready to snap. "Where did you get that?" he demanded, his voice breaking with disbelief and grief all over again. She swallowed hard. I don't know. She had it," I said softly, "hidden inside the baby blanket she threw away this morning." His head snapped toward her, disbelief turning into something darker, betrayal. "You hid this. You hid this for years. No, no, you don't understand," she cried, stepping forward with shaking hands, desperate to grab his arm, to grab control, anything. "I didn't steal it. I didn't do anything wrong." Her voice rose into a frantic pitch, the kind people use when their lies are slipping through their fingers like sand. I watched my son's heart crack open in real time. "Where did you get it?" he repeated, voice sharp, raw, demanding. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. No words, no excuses, nothing but fear. And that silence was louder than any admission. Because silence, especially in moments like this, is the voice of guilt. Unable to hold it any longer, she finally collapsed onto the floor, sobbing into trembling hands. "I didn't mean for anyone to find it," she wailed. "I didn't think she'd ever look inside the blanket. I just wanted it gone." My heart pounded. My son stared at her with a horror I can't describe. "Why?" he choked out. "Why hide it? Why throw it away?" "What did you do?" She shook her head violently. "Nothing. I swear I didn't hurt her. I found it months after we got married. I don't know who put it there. I don't know why. I just didn't want to deal with old memories in the house. Old memories." She said the words like they were trash, like they were liabilities, like they were things meant to be erased, not cherished. My son backed away from her, tears in his eyes, the weight of years of unanswered questions crushing him. "You found my wife's necklace and you hid it." His voice cracked, breaking in the middle, the sound of a man reliving the worst moment of his life. She sobbed harder. "I thought if you saw it, you'd fall apart again. I thought it would open everything up again. I thought you'd miss her," he snapped, voice shaking with fury. "I already miss her, every day." And then his voice softened, not with forgiveness, but with heartbreak. "You let me believe it was gone forever." She crawled toward him, desperate, reaching for his ankle like a drowning person clinging to anything. "I didn't know it mattered this much. I swear, please. I didn't want her memory between us." And there it was. The real truth, not about the necklace, about her intentions. She didn't want his first wife between them. She didn't want the past. She didn't want the memory. She didn't want the love he still had for his late wife. She wanted to erase anything that reminded him of her, including her daughter's baby blanket, the last thing tying him to a woman he never stopped missing. A deep, exhausted sadness filled my chest. My son sank onto the stairs, head in his hands, broken. Melissa sat on the floor, sobbing into her knees, broken in a different way. I didn't yell, I didn't gloat, I didn't say, "I told you so." I just looked at the blanket, the one that held more truth than any of us realized, and knew something important. What she tried to throw away wasn't just a blanket, it was a memory, a bond, a love she could never replace. And she had destroyed her own marriage trying to erase what she could never compete with. My son finally looked up at me, voice soft, devastated. "Mom, what do?" I placed the blanket gently into his hands. "You start," I whispered, "by remembering." He nodded slowly, tears falling silently. As for Melissa, her downfall wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic, it was quiet, heavy, the kind that settles in when truth can no longer be buried, but the story wasn't done. Because later that night, when I examined the metal box again, I noticed something I hadn't before: a slot underneath, a hidden compartment, and what was tucked inside it was far worse than the necklace. She feared this. She threw this away. And now I needed to confront her, but I didn't expect what happened next. Because when I stepped out of my bedroom, ready to demand answers, Melissa was already standing in the hallway, pale, breathless, eyes wide with terror. And she wasn't looking at me. She was looking at the blanket in my hands. I felt my entire world tilt. She wasn't getting rid of the blanket. She was getting rid of whatever was inside it, and whatever it was important, it was personal. And it was going to tear this family wide open. My daughter-in-law hadn't just thrown away a memory, she was trying to get rid of whatever was hidden inside that blanket. My breath trembled, my fingers tightened. 1,000 questions flooded my mind all at once. What was she hiding? Why inside my granddaughter's blanket? How long had it been there? And why did she choose today, of all days, to throw it out? But one fear rose above them all, gripping me so tightly that I felt the world tilt. What if whatever was inside that blanket was never meant for my eyes, or worse, what if it was meant to stay hidden forever? I clutched the blanket to my chest, its heaviness now terrifying, and stepped inside the house without a word. I didn't know what I was about to discover. I didn't know if this was a mistake or a warning or the beginning of something far darker than I ever imagined. All I knew was this: I had to open that blanket, and whatever I found inside would change everything. Long after the shouting stopped, after my son retreated to his childhood room in exhausted silence, and Melissa locked herself in the guest room sobbing into her own fear, the house fell into a kind of stillness I had never felt before, a heavy, suspended silence, as if the walls themselves were sorting through the truth we had uncovered that morning. I carried the metal box back to my room, its weight no longer just physical but emotional, carrying the gravity of past grief, present betrayal, and unanswered questions I didn't even know still existed. I placed it on my bed and stared at it for a long moment, letting my hands settle, letting my breathing calm, letting the memories of my late daughter-in-law, my son's first wife, wash over me. Her laughter, her gentleness. The way she held her baby, the way she loved my son, the way she wore that necklace everywhere. Losing her had broken all of us. And now, years later, this cold little box had dragged open a wound none of us were prepared to revisit. I reopened it slowly, the metal creaking again, echoing faintly in the quiet room. The necklace lay there, tangled and delicate, still carrying the faint outline of a life cut short. I stroked it gently with my thumb, whispering a silent apology to the woman who should still be here raising her daughter. But something inside me whispered that the necklace wasn't the only secret inside. Not after everything Melissa had done to hide it, not after her frantic behavior, her trembling hands, her panic. I turned the box upside down, running my fingers along its underside, and that's when I felt it, a raised line, thin like a seam, but slightly uneven. My heart picked up. I pressed along the edge, gently but firmly, and suddenly, click, a tiny hidden panel slid open underneath. My stomach dropped. Inside was a folded piece of paper, yellowed slightly at the edges as if it had been hidden for a long time. My fingers shook as I pulled it out. It wasn't a receipt. It wasn't a picture. It wasn't a note written recently. It was a letter written in handwriting I recognized instantly, her handwriting, my son's first wife. My throat tightened, tears pricking hot at the corner of my eyes. I sat down slowly, clutching the letter, terrified and aching all at once. Why was this hidden? Why had Melissa kept it? Why throw it away now? I unfolded it gently, the paper soft and fragile. The words, written in delicate cursive, blurred for a moment as my eyes filled, but I blinked until they sharpened, and then I began to read. If anything happens to me, my blood ran cold. The letter wasn't long, just a page, but every word stabbed deeper than the last. She wrote about feeling watched, feeling unsafe, feeling like someone close to the family resented her. She didn't name anyone, she didn't accuse anyone directly, but she mentioned strange things, missing items, our granddaughter crying at random times, things moved in the house when no one was supposed to be home. And then the line that made my breath stop: if this letter is ever found, please protect my daughter. Something feels wrong, and I can't shake the feeling that someone wants me gone. My hands flew to my mouth, a sob ripping from my chest. The room blurred with tears. The sound of my heartbeat thundered in my ears. She knew something. She feared someone, and someone in this house had been hiding her final message all along. I read it again and again and again, each word sinking into me like cold metal. All this time, we thought her passing was an accident, a tragedy, a cruel twist of fate. But what if it wasn't? What if someone had played a part? Because the most horrifying realization hit me then: only two people had access to her things after she passed: me and Melissa. My breath trembled. I pressed a hand to my chest, not out of fear for myself, but fear for what truth might come next, for what truth might destroy my son, my granddaughter, what little stability we had left. How long had Melissa had this? Why did she hide it? Why did she throw it away? Why did she panic? Why did she shake? Why did she act like she was covering a crack in the world she built? I closed my eyes and whispered to the still room, "Dear God, what did she do?" I stepped into the hallway clutching the letter, feeling like a century had passed between breaths. My son was there, sitting on the stairs with his head in his hands, tears dripping down his wrists. He looked up, eyes red, face broken. "Mom," he whispered, "I don't understand why she did this, why she would hide something so precious." I swallowed hard, kneeling beside him, holding his shaking hands in mine. "There's more," I whispered, his brows furrowed. I placed the letter in his hand. When he recognized the handwriting, when he read the first line, when he reached the part about someone wanting her gone, a cry tore from his throat, low, guttural, heart-wrenching. "No, no, no, this can't be real," he gasped, clutching his chest. But it was real. And suddenly, everything Melissa had done, her controlling behavior, her hostility toward the past, her fear of old things, her resentment of his first wife, her refusal to talk about her, her obsession with erasing memories, took a darker shape. A shape none of us were ready to face. Before I could speak, before I could comfort him, before I could make sense of any of it, a soft creak cut through the hallway. We looked up. Melissa stood in the doorway, pale, shaking. Her eyes fixed on the letter in my son's hand, and the horror on her face told us one thing: she knew exactly what that letter was, and she knew the truth was finally out. The house went dead silent. She didn't move, she didn't blink. She didn't breathe. My son stood slowly, the letter trembling in his hand, betrayal twisting every part of him. "Melissa," he whispered, voice cracking, "what did you do?" She didn't answer. She couldn't. And that silence was the most dangerous answer of all.